Story 1. One time, my friend called me and said she made a box of cookies for me, but I had to pick it up at another friend's house. I was so happy, thinking that she must have really valued our friendship to make a box of cookies for me. Then I went to social media and found out that my friend and the one who had the box of cookies had a party where they made cookies, and I wasn't invited. The box she wanted to gift me was hers. She made it, then forgot to bring it home but didn't want to come back to pick it up. I just happened to live near the house where they held the party. Story 2. For 2 consecutive days during the break, one of my colleagues sat down at our table right before we all had to get up and leave. It felt like we were deliberately bullying him, but it was just a coincidence. Story 3. When a coworker ignores your friend request on Facebook but is friends with all your other coworkers. Story 4. Not receiving an invitation for the wedding, only for the reception afterwards, while the rest of the friend group, including their partners, are invited. Story 5. When your childhood friend calls you and then abruptly says they have to go because the person they called first is returning their call, it can feel disappointing. Story 6. Not having a friend group chat makes me feel isolated. All my coworkers talk about their group chats with friends. I wonder why I am not close enough to anyone to have one. I tell myself maybe I'm just getting older, but I'm only 40. Story 7. Nobody told me or my sister that grandma died because they didn't want us to tell our dad, as they didn't want him at the funeral. Story 8. Being invited to an event on the same day is often disappointing, especially when the event has been planned for weeks or months. If you're invited at the last minute, it feels like you're just a seat filler. Story 9. You are being asked if you want to join a group event because someone cannot use their ticket, allowing you to participate. Story 10. I received a notification about planning a party, but the location and time are yet to be confirmed. People have been asking why I wasn't there, but I realized afterward that they forgot to provide me with the details. Story 11. I'm a console video game player, although I don't game very much. My gaming friends are a bit younger, with fast computers and seemingly endless time to play. I just want to be included and considered good by them at least once. However, by the time a game supports crossplay or I figure it out, they have moved on to the next game. I feel lonely and can't even get people to play video games with me anymore, even if it's just for an extra person, regardless of my presence. Story 12. Being at a company for 20 years and interviewing for promotions without ever being considered is disheartening. Story 13. After meeting at an event, they discussed going somewhere else with their friends without inviting you to join them. Story 14. At my last company, they hosted a conference, and I was the only one who didn't receive a conference name tag. As a result, security continually asked who I was whenever I entered or exited different areas. I felt quite excluded. However, I am now at a smaller and more welcoming company where I feel a greater sense of belonging. Story 15. Recently, a couple of friends complained that I can't keep expecting them to do things for me all the time. After I pointed out some of the favors I've done for them over the last year and mentioned that I couldn't remember asking for or receiving a single favor in return from them, other than the one I had just requested, they proceeded to list all the times we had socialized together. Apparently, inviting me to go to the pub with a group of friends is considered doing me a favor. Story 16. When you suggest doing something with a friend and they say they are already with other mutual friends, they invite you to tag along. Story 17. I see many people here upset about being ignored by colleagues or not being invited to lunch or parties. Honestly, in adult life, that feels like a luxury to me. Story 18. When people use your ideas and then take credit for them, they expect you to be happy that someone acknowledged your contribution. When individuals imply that you should be grateful for being included, yet there is no official record of your involvement, it can be frustrating. Story 19. Thank you for applying. We have decided to pursue a different direction, but we will keep your resume on file and contact you if our needs change. Story 20. Being a part-timer, I had 2 external candidates hired for full-time positions before being offered full-time myself, even though their background checks did not pass. Story 21. I do CrossFit, and there have been numerous times when I am the only person without a partner for a workout. I often end up as someone's third or with someone at a vastly different skill level. It feels no different from my experiences growing up and is still demoralizing. Story 22. I was informed that an important executive will be coming into the office, so I should take the day off and not report to work that day. Story 23. My friends didn't invite me to participate in a 5K because they thought I was too overweight and slow. They assumed I wasn't interested in it. When I found out, I felt very insulted, so I lost 100 pounds and completed the 5K 6 months later. Story 24. It's surprising to me that so many of these situations revolve around work. Spending time with coworkers feels like a chore rather than a pleasure. I would prefer to be excluded. Story 25. You only get invited to dinner or a night out once the host has already arranged it with someone else. It is never "when are you free to come over," but rather "Bob's coming to dinner Friday if you want to join us." The harsh reality is that if Bob cancels, you receive a message saying, "Dinner is canceled, Bob can't make it." Story 26. Telling the people you thought were your friends that you were living with due to hard times that you wanted to go to the beach together that summer, and then waking up to find them all at the beach without you or even saying a word. They said there was no space in the car. There were many bad signs with them, but I was so overwhelmed at the time that I tried to hide it to avoid feeling shameful. I still feel gross or ashamed now. Story 27. I have been asked to fill in as a bridesmaid because the bride's new coworker decided not to attend. Story 28. I worked the third shift in a medical lab. On holidays, they would buy lunch for the first and second shifts, and sometimes they would leave the leftovers for the third shift. They never tried to provide us with fresh food. There were multiple 24-hour diners within 15 minutes of the lab, and I'm sure one of them could have managed it for the 20 people that worked the third shift. Story 29. My boss asked me to add a meeting to his calendar, and I noticed an entry for senior lab member meeting that I was not included in. I was the most senior lab member and also the only woman. That night, I began searching for a new job. Story 30. When you are supposed to be in the confidential group chat, but they invite a random reporter and do not realize that you are not there. Story 31. My sister got married last year and chose our cousin, whom she sees maybe once every 2 years, as her maid of honor. Story 32. My coworker's birthday is 4 days after mine. In her first year, I found out about this 5 days after my own birthday because no one got her a card or cake like they did for me. I make sure to give her a card every year, and the office also provides her with a card and cake each year. It felt disappointing to learn that we overlooked her birthday. Story 33. Never being considered for promotion while nearly anyone in your position, whether new or experienced, is advancing over time. Story 34. The office team went for drinks and discussed the entire plan while I was nearby, but they never asked if I wanted to join. I was picked last when the boys played team activities during my childhood. Story 35. Being the last chosen for pairs in your martial arts class can be difficult. At 40 years old, I still feel like that awkward kid nobody wants to work with. Story 36. I'm in a group text with 4 other friends I've had since high school. I'm in my 40s now. A few years ago, due to extenuating circumstances, I had to move across the country, and I'm not good at making friends. Even though I never see them, they're pretty much my only friends. When the group text is really active, I'll chime in, and then it immediately stops. Story 37. Failing an interview for a job that you are qualified for, only because your personality is not a fit with the office environment, is frustrating. Losing job opportunities because of your personality can be painful. Story 38. They say every group chat has a secondary group chat without the people they find annoying, allowing members to discuss those individuals. If you are only part of one group chat, you know which one you are. Story 39. My boss introduced a new employee to everyone in the office and walked right past my office. Story 40. I worked at my last job for 4 to 5 years. It was customary when someone left the job to get them a card or a cake, as it was a bakery and cake was easily accessible. I was typically the one who bought the card and got everyone to sign it multiple times. However, when I left, I didn't receive a card or anything. That was disappointing. Story 41. Showing up for your 40th high school reunion and nobody remembers you. even though you point yourself out in the yearbook. Story 42. When trying to merge lanes on the highway because your lane is ending but nobody lets you in, you have to stop when your lane runs out. However, traffic in the other lane is moving too fast for you to get a chance to merge again. Story 43. When your mother organizes an entire Thanksgiving plan and brings in relatives from all over the country, but forgets to inform or invite you. Story 44. I was not asked to help carry my best friend's casket at his funeral, and then his parents told me that I could help if I wanted to, even though he was already being carried. Story 45. My family took everyone to Hawaii but waited until I graduated and was driving to their house to tell me. They went to Hawaii for Christmas. Story 46. Union busting feels like being targeted for being in the union. It is very similar to bullying. Story 47. We have employee awards about 6 times a year, and in my 4 years, I have never received one, while several people have won multiple times. Some have won twice in a row from different individuals, as the winners select the new recipients, creating a rotation among workplace friends. Story 48. It feels much like the Amish practice of shunning, but it is less intentional. It should reflect more on those who are being left out, but it feels quite personal. Story 49. I worked at a small company, and when my colleague turned 40, we had a cake, a present, a card, and a presentation to give it all to him before we went to lunch together. A week later, it was my 40th, and none of that happened. I received some happy birthday messages on Slack, but I couldn't even get anyone to have lunch with me. Story 50. My neighbor had a Tupperware and Longaburger selling party on a Thursday night. I was invited for the first time to her house. The ladies there were discussing their weekly Thursday drinks night at her house, which I had never been invited to. But this time, when she was selling something, I received an invitation. Story 51. I have sent over 10,000 job applications in my life. I have been to 5 interviews. One job interview led to employment, but I was let go after a few months when my employer decided to pay his wife to work in the store. Story 52. Giving vague excuses for not attending an event you are planning 4 months in the future is frustrating, especially when you have specifically invited people you believed were genuinely interested and would not engage in such behavior. Story 53. Seeing the pictures on social media of the group trip or activity they all planned, but didn't invite you to or even mention it was happening at all. Story 54. When I was a waitress, I had a boss who loved to praise his employees to customers. A very important customer came in once, and he took them back to the kitchen to introduce the 4 servers who were working. And this is the amazing Sam, who has her own fashion line. And this is the fabulous Jessica, who just graduated college and is as intelligent as she is beautiful. When he got to me, I could see him freeze up, and he started stuttering. And he genuinely could not think of anything nice to say about me. It was humiliating and hurt deeply. Story 55. Watching everyone who became a supervisor after you were promoted to manager is frustrating, especially considering that you trained most of them. Story 56. I was invited to a friend's birthday party for years, but I never went because parties are not my thing. However, I attended once and was never invited again. Story 57. When you have a family group chat and no one responds to your messages, but they respond to everyone else and all your siblings have a separate chat without the parents and you're not in it. Story 58. I have been informed that application engineers often request specific engineers to collaborate with on their projects instead of selecting those who are least busy. Story 59. This is more of a military situation, but when you ask your friends if they want to go to eat and they have already gone with someone else. Story 60. Moving back to your hometown after being away for 8 years and none of your friends have called or texted to hang out. Story 61. When you help everyone understand the new phone system and find your mutual friends' numbers, but they don't ask for your number. Story 62. When a former friend, whom I haven't seen in years, comes to my town for concerts and then messages me at the last minute to say I could hang out with them and their friends, it feels insincere. Story 63. If someone tells you about the event you weren't invited to, is it keeping you informed or rubbing it in your face? Story 64. Being a nurse and never receiving a Nightingale Award may indicate a hidden desire for self-destruction. Did it show? Story 65. I was starting to get to know a group of girls. We went on a trip and for outings in our town, and all of a sudden, I saw on Instagram that the whole group except me had gone on a weekend trip. I didn't talk to them after that. Story 66. Not getting promoted and continuously being passed over for individuals who eventually make headlines for racism, sexual assault cover-ups, or other unacceptable behaviors. Story 67. Your coworkers in the small management team forgot your birthday while everyone else's birthday was remembered. Your boss made excuses for you to be the only one excluded from the annual 3-day convention each year. You were excluded from group messages. Story 68. Every technician on the team was invited to an engineer's project except for you. And yes, it's because you have a difficult personality. Story 69. Coworkers being friendly with you, like you might even talk outside of work. Then you find out one is having a party and everyone else got invited except you. Story 70. No one told you there were donuts in the break room, and when you stumble in and find the box, there's only one half-eaten one remaining. Story 71. I was asked by my boss to be the new team lead. I felt good, as if I had made a great impression on people. It turns out that everyone else on my team had already been asked before me and declined the position. Story 72. Being invited to a group vacation solely because they are trying to find more participants to reduce costs. Story 73. My work conducts daily stand-up meetings for everyone to briefly review the tasks they accomplished on the previous workday and how they plan to spend the current day. Our system is set up so the lead speaks first, and then each person who has spoken chooses the next speaker. I have been skipped multiple times. Story 74. Traveling 10 hours by plane with a 4-year-old while a friend of 20 years won't come to meet you just 20 minutes away because they have to work the next day is quite challenging. Story 75. I discovered that a coworker had died when I arrived at work. The manager had apparently called everyone else personally to inform them in advance to avoid any surprise. Story 76. I was appointed as the acting team leader and given 5 new hires to train. They were the last 5 in a pool of qualified applicants. I shared with them about Judge Harry Stone from the show Night Court. He was the last one on the list of qualified candidates and the only one who answered the phone. On the show, he faced criticism based on that situation. The truth was, he made it onto the list. I explained to my team that being on the list meant they were qualified. Story 77. Left out of potlucks at work but offered leftovers. Friends excluding me from plans to attend a concert together. Getting your hair done at the salon and seeing better-looking clients treated like royalty while you receive minimal attention. Story 78. When you attend a meetup with friends, most of whom are about 2 to 3 hours away, and they begin discussing a vacation they are planning together in the near future, you realize that they are all in a separate group chat without you and have no problem openly discussing not inviting you. Story 79. It was genuinely an accident. She had a lot going on and was having an extremely difficult pregnancy on top of it. However, my sister invited me to come over 3 times at future dates and times, but she was not there when I arrived. We lived a couple of hours apart, so it was not as if I was just dropping by. I actually thought it was pretty funny the first time. The second time it happened, she was not even in the country on the day I came over. After the third incident, I told her that if it happened again, I would assume she did not actually want to see me. That seemed to make it clear that it was hurtful to be such a low priority that she could not be bothered to cancel with me if plans changed. To her credit, it has never happened again. Story 80. A friend you have been close with for 5 years does not invite you to his wedding and then talks about it to everyone who was invited while you are in the room. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.